Dan called me last spring, and he said, I have a pilot for the show. It was called The 36 at the time. And he gave me the script, and he's like, you know, will you take a look at this and see what it inspires? And I kind of had to demo with a bunch of other people that were trying to get the job for it was called The 36 at the time, that eventually became This Is Us. I read the script, and it was really beautiful, and it inspired like the 6-minute piece of music that I just wrote, and I sent it to him, and I got the job on the show, and that was it.
Did that 6-minute piece ever end up as part of the show?
Mm-hmm. Appeared in a lot of the scenes in that first season. It was a Weight Watchers theme. It was when Kate is going to Weight Watchers class, and it plays on periods. Yeah, so the show takes place, at least the first season, that pilot. By the end of basically in the pilot, you have these 3 unrelated are seemingly unrelated storylines of these families, and what you find out at the end is that they're all part of the same family, and the stories are being told in different decades, but you have no idea because a lot of the shots from the 70s that you see are very close up, and so you don't get a sense of what people are wearing, or you don't get a sense of the environment they're around that would give it away that it's the 70s. And so the challenge in the score was making sure that that I found a sound that was kind of timeless, that could live in multiple decades. And there were transitions that were happening, and as the season progressed, these transitions that were happening between the 70s, the 80s, the 70s and the 80s to today, or the 70s and to the 90s to today, and the music had to live in all the different decades. That was one challenge, and I remember the network studio saying to me, how are we going to sell people on these transitions going back in time, forward in time, because we jump cut a lot, and it happens so frequently. And so I opted for something kind of atmospheric that would help get us through the scene, get us through the transitions. And then by the second episode, I completely abandoned all of that because I felt it was cooler to just have the audience kind of figure out on their own. The character development was so strong, the characters were so strong that we didn't need to really sell with like cheesy kind of stuff taking you back in time and forward in time. It felt schlocky, cheesy. And so the sound I went for was what I discovered by reading the script, that this 6-minute piece of music I sent to Dan, and it was very acoustic based, and a lot of my influence is Nick Drake on this score, and a lot of open, weird tunings, cello, vocal. There's a lot of the score of this show, and we found that kind of really worked. And the other thing too on this show is that it's a very emotional show, and the writing is really beautiful, the acting is beautiful, but the performances are, I mean, people watch this show and they cry a lot watching this show. And the kind of expected approach would have been go with a little more sweeping kind of orchestral kind of approach to something. People at the studio were saying we want something big, and I pushed back a little bit, saying that if we did that, it might make the show schmaltzier, you know, and so I kind of opted for something more subtle with the score, and it seemed to work for everybody.
You just mentioned this is a sound that you tried and then later moved on from.
Yeah, I went even more. This was an early sound of the show that I liked because it had some of the atmospheric elements and it had the acoustic elements, and then eventually I even got rid of some of the atmospheric stuff and it went even more organic, just in the sound. But this was an example of some of the ways I score this show. This was a piece that I did not score to picture. So, and this is a case where the editor made me look a lot better. But it was an important part of my process with This Is Us is having a really a great relationship with the editors on the show, because as they're editing the footage they get, having music available to them, and if there's a good editor in my mind who knows how to work with music, they can actually shape the picture around the music. And this was a piece that I had written just by knowing what this episode was about, and I'd kind of read script, and just put it down, and maybe I saw maybe one shot of this, like maybe like 10 seconds worth of footage, and turned it and then turned off my screen and just wrote, and I wrote this piece, and I like doing that too because it gives the editor kind of more stuff to play with, and so then he ended up cutting picture around this music. I think for me my approach to scoring this show in particular is this is special for me because I also know the showrunner, and so I know why these characters are there in the first place. You know, so when I'm scoring, and you'll see the next thing we play, I did score that to picture specifically from seeing that scene, but I kind of know what he's experienced in his own personal life that he's bringing to the show, and I'm almost, it's almost like it sounds strange, but I'm writing the music to help him find some catharsis through the stories that he's writing and presenting on screen. It's like I'm writing this for my friend and not for anyone else. I almost feel that way. Wow. And so that kind of makes, it allows me to almost tap into something, for better or worse, to something deeper. And it allows me to experience the show in a totally different way. Like I'm not I see what's going on here, but I know that, you know, his mom died at a very young age, and I know how much that affected him. And so I'm also writing it to help him or something.
Roughly how much of the show do you write apart from picture versus to picture?
Most of it is to picture. But what I like to do, and it helps editors, and I know Dan appreciates it too, is whenever I have any sort of free time, I've had some time this summer, or like if there's even like a couple days off, I will just write big global pieces based on what I know is about to happen in the series. And then 9 out of 10 times it ends up not being used in the context that I wrote it for, which is special too. I love my favorite way to write I like not writing to picture, to be honest, because it allows me to have a piece of music, a concept that's fully realized from beginning to end. And then when it hits picture, and if it's cut to picture in the right way with the right editor behind it, things are not on the nose. And so there are these happy accidents that happen. Like in that piece, I remember when the editor called me in, he's like, "Sid, come in, and I want to show you what I did with this piece." I remember just like, I was like, "You made me look so much better as a composer than if I scored that, it would have been its own thing, but I might have been trying to hit certain moments, and it might have felt on the nose." And I don't know. So I appreciate when these moments happen. It's some of my favorite stuff. Yeah.
Strategic use of voice. You added vocals in there. You presumably?
Yeah.
It's a really nice aspect to it.
I mean, a lot of what I'm doing on the show is just I'm pedaling on the one the whole time. There's like no voice.
But it's how you do it.
But it's part of it, because I think it adds this. It's intense. I mean, part of it is like the open tuning I'm using is just like I can pedal on the low string, but then it also creates this tension where it's like you're never fully. There's no real resolution, which is what keeps. It kind of adds a little more drama into the scenes. I think keeps, at least for me.
It's also a bit of a mirror, because the music is not doing crazy complex things. It sits there, and now suddenly the drama on screen can go in different directions.
Right.
And are we sad? Are we happy? Are we grief-stricken over the funeral that's going on, or over the lead character's realization of the issue she's working through? Music like that can function as a mirror,
Right.
so we can
Right.
we can echo our own emotions off that. So it is very powerful. Music does not always have to be complex. We had that the first half of today. So,
yeah, I think that's that if I had done something kind of bigger and more sweeping, I might kind of cheapen the performance, and so I kind of have opted for something that's more under the skin.